Summer's End by Lilac Noctua. Read for you by Demonic Little Bat. Bokuto hardly seemed to notice that Akaashi had begun to lag behind. He walked with his face tipped back towards the cotton candy evening sky, the strap of his bag looped over his forehead. And then it was like BAM! He said. Did you see it, Akaashi? Did you? Of course, Akaashi murmured. But then the net was closer than I thought. Bokuto barked at a laugh. Funny how that happens sometimes. The wind picked up, rustling through the hedges along the street, making Akaashi shiver in his thin t-shirt. Soon the leaves would begin to change, and they would have to wear their tracksuits after practice again. Summer was hanging on tenaciously, but it wouldn't last much longer. I think next time I'll have to do it with more, what do you call it? Bokuto grumbled as the words that he was trying to describe eluded him. You know, more of this. Akaashi eyed Bokuto's back as he mimed hitting a cross shot, the weight of his bag swinging around and nearly pulling him off balance. Since Center High, there had been a hollow ache beneath his ribs whenever he and Bokuto were alone together. It seemed to grow stronger every day. The summer holidays of Bokuto's last year of high school had finished only weeks ago. Now they would fling themselves into preparing for the spring tournament, and then the end of the school year. It would all pass by so quickly. Sometimes Akaashi felt like it had only been a few short days since he had stepped into the gym as a first year. On the other hand, the part of his life that he thought of as before Bokuto felt distant and hazy, like he could no longer imagine what he filled his days with before he'd been pulled into orbit around this bright, overflowing presence. And then Kaori-san told me that if I keep getting crumbs all over the floor, she'd make me eat outside, Bokuto complained. Akaashi wasn't quite sure when he'd circle back to this topic. It's not fair! I'm not even as messy as Onaga! Did you see him spill water down his shorts yesterday? Akaashi hummed in response, unable to keep his mind on the conversation. Soon, it'd be over. Akaashi's final year would see a new team captain and a new ace, both with very big shoes to fill. Akaashi didn't want to think about an era of his life that would be called after Bokuto. Maybe the team would be able to get by without him next year. That was just the way of it with a high school team. But Akaashi didn't want to have to do without him in anything else as well. He had been thinking about this for a long time, going around and around in circles inside his own head. But it had been at lunch earlier that day that he finally made up his mind in the moment of sudden clarity. Bokuto had been having a spirited trash-talking competition with Kuro over text message, looking up only to ask Akaashi how to spell certain words, and then repeatedly missing his mouth with his chopsticks. That's it, Akaashi! Bokuto finally exclaimed, flinging his phone down on the table. We have to beat Nekoma. Of course we will, Bokuto-san. Akaashi had agreed. There's food all over your face. Bokuto had scowled and scrubbed at his face with a napkin, somehow managing to make the mess worse, as he launched into an explanation of what he wanted to work on for that afternoon's practice. Akaashi had reached across the table with his own napkin to blot the sauce off the tip of Bokuto's nose. Bokuto had turned bright red and gone suddenly quiet, but he had beamed at Akaashi, and it was like the rest of the room had faded away. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Moments like that when Akaashi could swear that there was something there, that Bokuto was feeling the same thing that he was, were becoming increasingly more often. But after graduation in the spring, there'd be no more moments like this. Bokuto would move on, likely to stardom in a world of professional sports, if Akaashi was the judge of it. He'd become someone else's problem and forget about Akaashi entirely. That is, unless Akaashi said something now. It could all go wrong, he knew that. But if he was going to lose Bokuto one way or another at the end of this year, it'd be easier to accept that loss if he knew he had done everything in his power to prevent it. At the very least, he had to try. The train station came into view ahead of them, and Akaashi took a deep breath. He'd spent the entire afternoon overthinking this, considering every possible outcome, attempting to predict how Bokuto might react. But now he felt strangely calm. If it went poorly, then he would get on his train, and Bokuto would carry on to the bus stop. They would go their separate ways before the evening, and tomorrow, it would be like nothing ever happened. Bokuto paused outside the station's main doors, only just then to seem to realize that Akaashi wasn't beside him anymore. He spun in circles, his posture almost panicked until he caught sight of Akaashi, and his face broke into a wide grin. "Are you tired, Akaashi?" he called, dropping his bag onto his shoulder. "You're so slow." "No, I'm just thinking." Akaashi reached for the strap of Bokuto's bag and led him away from the doors, towards the row of trees and flower beds around the side of the station. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Of course! Something bothering you?" "Yes," Akaashi admitted, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. Maybe he wasn't quite so calm as he had thought. "I have to tell you something." "I'm listening." Bokuto's eyebrows were drawn together in concern. He was wearing an old tank top with a faded image of Vabo-chan on the front, and when he scratched idly at a mosquito bite on his bare shoulder, Akaashi noticed a list of homework assignments scrawled on the back of his hand in smudged ink. Akaashi had never been so sure of wanting something in his entire life. "So, it's like this," he began. Bokuto nodded and shuffled a little closer so that he could hear Akaashi better over the clatter and squeal of the train pulling into station. "Since I met you, well, everything in my life has changed." Akaashi managed to tell him. "Actually, I can't really imagine my life without you anymore." The concerned expression on Bokuto's face transformed into a smile at once. "Aw, Akaashi!" Akaashi held up a finger to silence him before he could go further. "I've come to realize that I have feelings for you. Romantic feelings, I mean." Saying it out loud felt like taking a blind leap over the edge of a cliff, thrilling and terrifying all at once. Bokuto blinked, once, twice, slowly. He'd shook his head as though to clear it. Akaashi tried to remember the rest of what he had coached himself to say. He'd swallowed hard and took a deep breath. And if you feel the same way about me, then, well, I think we should be together." Bokuto didn't move or speak. "That's all," Akaashi whispered. "All," Bokuto repeated quietly. Akaashi winced. A quiet Bokuto was rarely ever a good thing. You think that we..." Bokuto seemed to be having a hard time making sense of his own thoughts. "Really?" Akaashi nodded. "Oh." Bokuto's shoulders sagged in what almost looked like relief, and his face broke into a wide grin. "Really? Actually? This isn't a joke?" "Why would I joke about something like this?" Akaashi wanted to think that the smile was a good thing. He had never seen a stunned into silence Bokuto before, and he couldn't figure out how to interpret it. "Oh," Bokuto said again, still smiling. "You actually mean it?" Yes, was all the reasoning in the world was useless. His heart was pounding and his hands were shaking. Bokuto shook his head hard and then dropped his school bag onto the ground. "You actually mean it!" Before Akaashi could reply, Bokuto had leapt at him, catching him in a too-tight hug, nearly bowling them both over. Akaashi stumbled, and his back landed against a nearby tree trunk, bark scraping his skin through his shirt. "You're crushing me, Bokuto-san." Akaashi wheezed, though he clung to Bokuto tightly so that he wouldn't let go. Bokuto smelled like hair gel and sunlight. His bare arms were wrapped around Akaashi's back, and Akaashi could feel as much hear the happy little noises he made in his chest. Bokuto released his hold on Akaashi and helped him to straighten up, steadying him with his hands cupped under his elbows, grinning from ear to ear. "You seem happy about that," Akaashi dared to say, his heart in his throat, his hands hovering uselessly in the air between them, unsure of what to do. Bokuto moved like he was going to throw himself at Akaashi again, but seemed to think better of it. Instead, his smile widened further, crinkling the corners of his eyes. I'm so happy." "Okay," Akaashi whispered. He knew he should say something else, but he couldn't quite find the words. "I like you too, Akaashi," Bokuto exclaimed breathlessly. "I like you so much." "So, you want to..." Somehow, in spite of that ridiculous smile on Bokuto's face, Akaashi almost didn't dare hope that the answer would be yes. But Bokuto nodded profusely and started bouncing on the balls of his feet, as though his joy had become too much for even the force of gravity to contain. Kuro kept telling me to ask you, but I didn't think you would want that, and even if you did like me back, I didn't know what I was going to do next year, and I might have to go far away, and I didn't think you'd want to deal with something like that. I know it's all uncertain. Akaashi finally grabbed the hem of Bokuto's tank top in an effort to stop him from relentlessly bouncing. It was beginning to make him dizzy. I don't mind. I don't mind if it can only be for a little while. I still want it to. Really? Bokuto asked again. He leaned forward to peer into Akaashi's face more closely. I realized that if I didn't say anything, or if you didn't feel the same way, then you'd leave at the end of this year and forget about me. Akaashi told him. I could never forget about you. Never. Bokuto protested, shaking Akaashi gently. Akaashi, you're so... Bokuto's eyes knit together in concentration, and he began to fidget again, his mouth moving soundlessly as though he was trying out different words and finding them all inadequate. Bokuto-san, you don't have to. Akaashi! Bokuto gave him another little shake. You're amazing. You're so much smarter than me, and I think you're even smarter than Kemma, but don't tell Kuro I said that. It really pisses him off. And you're so cool all the time. Everything you do is cool. Akaashi snorted, though he could feel himself blushing. Well, that's... And you're so beautiful, Bokuto all but shouted. I mean, have you seen yourself, Akaashi? I get so distracted sometimes, like I'll be focused on the ball, and then you're there, and then I get all flustered, and it's like I can't remember how my hands work or something, and sometimes I trip over my own feet. I thought that it couldn't be good for me, like maybe I was sick or something. But Kuro said it was normal, and that I should tell you about it, but I just couldn't. It was Akaashi's turn to be stunned into total silence. It had seemed like maybe his feelings for Bokuto weren't completely one-sided, but he never would have expected Bokuto to be keeping this all in. And you're never tired of me like everyone else does. Bokuto rambled on. You always want to practice with me, and you only complain a little, and you know the right things to say to make me feel better, and I can be better, and I think I am. Being near you just makes me so happy. Akaashi, Bokuto seemed to deflate. His hands tightened around Akaashi's elbows, pulling him closer, and his head dropped forward until he was staring down at his feet. When he spoke, he was much quieter. It's weird to think I'll be on a team without you next year. That we may never play volleyball again together after this. I don't like it. I don't either, Akaashi whispered. I want to be with you, Bokuto announced, but I really didn't think it was fair. What if I have to go really far away next year, Akaashi? What if you don't want to have to deal with that? I understand. Really. It's okay. Akaashi twisted the hem of Bokuto's shirt around his fingers, pulling him a little closer. I already decided that if you're going to break my heart at the end of this year, one way or another, I'd rather let you smash it. It'd be totally worth it. Bokuto shook his head and then gave Akaashi a look of deep distress, apparently at loss for words. For a moment, Akaashi worried that Bokuto might burst into tears or jump on him again. Possibly both. I'm not going to break your heart, Akaashi. I promise. Akaashi opened his mouth to tell Bokuto that right now neither of them could possibly know that. But Bokuto spoke over him. It doesn't matter where I go, and if I have to train all day and then stay up all night talking to you, when you finish studying, whatever happens, we'll make it work somehow. Akaashi, I swear. Akaashi held up a finger to stop him. I know. There's no need for you to worry about that. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Bokuto nodded, smiling again. For now, let's just think about the spring tournament, Akaashi reminded him. If he thought about only this, just here and now with Bokuto, it was much easier not to worry about the reality of their future, that it might not line up with what he so badly wanted. Bokuto cackled. It's going to be our best one ever! Right, and after that we can think about... Bokuto suddenly sized Akaashi's shoulders, smiling so wide that Akaashi thought it might hurt. Can I kiss you, Akaashi? Akaashi felt like the ground had just fallen out from beneath him, Like Bokuto's hands on his shoulders were the only thing keeping his soul from floating up and out of his body to drift away among the pink streaked clouds. Yes, he whispered. Okay. Okay, Bokuto repeated, his smile somehow growing even brighter. Okay. Akaashi tugged on the hem of Bokuto's shirt, trying to remember how to breathe, struggling to figure out what he was supposed to do next. Where should he put his hands? Was he supposed to lean in? Was he supposed to tilt his head? He just settled for letting his eyes slip closed. Except Bokuto didn't kiss him. Akaashi could feel Bokuto's warm breath on his face. He could smell Bokuto's minty lip balm, but nothing happened. When he opened his eyes, he found Bokuto's face very close to his, so close that their noses nearly knocked together. There was something strange happening in Bokuto's expression. He was still smiling, but it seemed to be struggling not to. The corners of his mouth twitching and his eyebrows drawn together in concentration as he fought to smooth out his features, only for the smile to burst back out again. Akaashi couldn't help but laugh. I'm sorry! Bokuto laughed, helplessly as well, pulling back. I just can't stop smiling! I can see that. Akaashi cupped his palm around Bokuto's flushed cheek. He wanted to memorize the warmth of his skin and the way that smile felt when he held it in his hands. Are you really that happy? Just because of this? I can't even tell you. Bokuto sighed deeply and managed to stop smiling just barely long enough to swiftly kiss Akaashi's palm. His smile returned, even more dazzling than before, as ripples of warmth spread through Akaashi's hands where Bokuto's mouth had touched it and down his arm. I'll try again, Bokuto announced. This time, Akaashi kept his eyes closed, his heart thundering in his chest as Bokuto leaned in and made a great effort to relax his face, only to start smiling again as soon as he got close enough to Akaashi to kiss him. Keep trying, Akaashi urged, though he was beginning to find it difficult not to smile himself. Bokuto ran one of his hands over his face, smoothing it out, and then beginning to grin like a fool all over again, when Akaashi tilted his face towards him. I'm sorry, Akaashi! Bokuto rested his forehead against Akaashi's. I just can't figure out how to stop. I don't think I'll ever stop smiling again. That's okay, Akaashi murmured. I don't mind. He finally disentangled his hands from the hem of Bokuto's shirt and brought it up to rest on his bare shoulder instead. I want to kiss you, though, Bokuto whined, nuzzling his nose against Akaashi's. I've wanted to kiss you for so long. I want to kiss you, too. It's just that every time I think about it, I start thinking and then I'm like, this is it. I'm finally going to kiss him, Bokuto explained. And then I get so happy that I just start smiling and I can't stop. Akaashi nodded. It was enough to just stand there like this, wrapped in strong arms with Bokuto's forehead pressed against his temple, and his smile warm against Akaashi's cheek. Akaashi closed his eyes and leaned into him a little more. I really want to kiss you, Bokuto repeated. Akaashi could feel him trying to pout and failing as the smile wouldn't leave his face. I have an idea. Don't think about anything. Just stop smiling and close your eyes. Bokuto did as he was told, taking a few deep breaths as he fought to clear his face. Akaashi watched him breathlessly, taking in the little crease between his lips, eyebrows, and the shadow of his jaw and the bow of his lips, almost overwhelmed by the quiet thrill of being able to stare at him so shamelessly from so close. Akaashi really couldn't blame Bokuto for smiling uncontrollably like that. Just the thought that he was about to kiss Bokuto made Akaashi feel a little wobbly. He had to will his hands not to shake as he reached up to cup Bokuto's now calm face between his palms. He wanted to linger here for a while, memorizing everything about how this moment felt, but the corners of Bokuto's mouth began to twitch dangerously. Akaashi took a deep breath, leaned in, and found himself kissing the front of Bokuto's teeth. Ah! I'm sorry, Akaashi! Bokuto wrenched himself away, hiding his burning face from his hands, and yet still smiling. I'm the worst boyfriend ever! Akaashi's heart jumped at the word boyfriend, almost like it was trying to launch itself right out of his chest. He grabbed Bokuto's elbow and pulled him close again, wrapping his arms tightly around Bokuto's waist. He leaned his cheek against Bokuto's and sighed. Don't worry. It really makes me happy that you're this happy. I'm not happy, Bokuto insisted. He ducked his head and pressed his face into the crook of Akaashi's neck, though trying to hide it. I want to kiss you, but I can't. You're still smiling, though. I can feel it. Of course I'm still smiling! Bokuto held Akaashi tighter until his ribs began to creak in protest. Akaashi shivered at the feeling of Bokuto's lips moving against the collar of his shirt. You kissed me just now! Well, Akaashi huffed out a breathless laugh. I tried to anyway. Suddenly, Akaashi's feet left the ground and he found himself slung over Bokuto's shoulder as Bokuto laughed and began to spin in circles. That's right! You did! You want to kiss me! Akaashi laughed along with him, knowing that trying not to would be pointless. It was shockingly easy to get caught up in Bokuto's whirlwind and forget about everything else when he was this happy. You're ridiculous. Come here. He wiggled backwards in Bokuto's hold just enough for the tips of his toes to touch the ground and kissed Bokuto's cheek. Absolutely ridiculous. Akaashi whispered against his face, feeling himself begin to smile just as widely and foolishly as Bokuto still was. But you like me. Bokuto let Akaashi stand properly again, but didn't let him go. Yeah, I do. Akaashi kissed the corner of Bokuto's smile, the space between his eyebrows, the corner of his jaw. Right now, it didn't matter what happened after graduation. There was nothing for Akaashi to worry about. No outcome to predict. There was just Bokuto, here and now, with a ludicrous grin on his face, and his arms tight around Akaashi's waist as he basked in Akaashi's attention like this. Bokuto's smile widened. A contented hum rumbled through his chest as he closed his eyes. So Akaashi kissed his eyelids, his cheekbones, and the tip of his nose. Akaashi. Bokuto had always had a particular way of saying Akaashi's name that made something deep inside his chest squeeze. He wondered now how good it would feel to hear Bokuto call him by his given name. That was an exploration for another day, he quickly decided. If he brought it up now, he could only imagine how much giddier Bokuto would be. This is not fair, Akaashi. What's not? Akaashi kissed the crinkle of the corner of Bokuto's left eye, his chin, and the corner of his smile again. He laughed softly at Bokuto's grin as it stretched even wider, and Bokuto whined and bumped his forehead against Akaashi's. I want to kiss you too! Then kiss me. All right. Bokuto squared his shoulders and nodded decisively. This time, I'm gonna do it. Akaashi fully expected to find only a smile when he leaned in to kiss Bokuto this time. But he felt Bokuto take a deep breath against his chest, and then surprisingly, soft lips pressed against his. It was nothing like he ever imagined. He had always pictured Bokuto kissing him energetically, maybe a little too enthusiastically. He thought that if he'd really wanted and was given the chance, Bokuto would sweep him off his feet, quite literally, tackling him to the ground and kissing him until Akaashi would have to push him away and remind him that they both needed to breathe. Instead, Bokuto held him so carefully, moving his lips gently against Akaashi's, as one of his thumbs stroked against Akaashi's cheek. Bokuto made a noise, something between a laugh and a sigh, and broke the kiss by smiling against Akaashi's lips once again. Akaashi blinked up at him. He imagined that this smile was different somehow than it had been before. No less happy, no less radiant, but somehow softer. He wrapped his arms around Bokuto's neck and kissed the corner of that smile again. There was a bright feeling like bubbles bursting under his skin, fizzy and intoxicating. You kissed me, Akaashi mumbled stupidly. Bokuto laughed out loud, that wild, booming laugh that meant he had won, and Akaashi found himself giggling as well, his face pressed up against Bokuto's warm, flushed cheek. I'll kiss you again, Bokuto promised. Still smiling. Just give me a second to pull myself together. Take your time. There's plenty of time. There was no next year, no uncertain future, no looming threat of separation. There was only him and Bokuto, with their arms wrapped around each other behind the train station, pressing their smiling mouths against each other's skin. Yeah, there is. Bokuto's smile reached its brightest yet, so Akaashi stood on his toes and kissed Bokuto's forehead, though his own face was beginning to hurt from smiling so much as well. As Akaashi littered Bokuto's face with kisses, working his way down towards his lips once again, he began a new entry in his exhaustive mental catalog of all things Bokuto. Ways to make Bokuto smile. Number 1. Hi everyone, I'm Demonic Little Bat, and I just wanted to thank you for listening to this podfic of Bokuto and Akaashi. It was one of my friends recommended to me, and I absolutely loved reading it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Anyway, I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll hopefully post again soon. Bye!